Welcome to Daily Focus, and I trust that you are staying dry. Uh, my creek is full behind my house, but it is still inside its banks, which is a very good thing. But I think we have the tropical storm slash hurricane that hit Texas to account for the rain that we're getting, as it has moved its way from the south to the north. But then also, I think of the change of seasons. We're moving into the fall season, and we're getting a little taste of that this morning, and reminds us that our God is in control of all things, and it is an encouragement. Well, I've entitled this one "Faithfully Running the Race," and the rest of First Corinthians chapter 9. Paul is still going to defend his apostleship to a certain extent, but he's going to do it in the context of his stewardship to the gospel. In other words, God had entrusted to him a stewardship of the gospel, and that was that he was to share the love of Christ that was represented in his sacrificial death on the cross, that made a way and paved the way for lost sinners to be reconciled back to God. He was a steward of that message. And for that stewardship, we share in that same stewardship with Paul. It has been entrusted to us, and it is our job to deliver that message to those who so desperately need it in the same condition in which we received it. So we don't have the right to water it down. We don't have the liberty to change it. We have a responsibility to declare that truth just as it was given to us. And Paul sensed that urgency. And he is stating to these naysayers who are seeking to destroy his credibility that uh, I'm not really interested in debating this with you. I want you to just understand that God gave me a stewardship. He called me to a specific calling, and I'm embracing that because of who God is, because of what God means to me, because I love Him, because I trust Him. And I'm going to do what God has called me to do, with or without you, with your blessing or without it, because I am committed to the calling of God on my life. And what a wonderful way to live. And so Paul makes an interesting statement in First Corinthians 9, verse 16. For though I preach the gospel, I have nothing to glory of. For necessity is laid upon me, yea, woe is unto me if I preach not the gospel. For if I do this thing willingly, I have a reward. But if against my will, a dispensation or stewardship of the gospel is committed unto me. He is simply saying this. Wow. He goes, if I'm doing this because I have to, if I'm doing this because it's some sort of burden, uh, woe unto me for missing what it was that was entrusted to me. But if I do this with my whole heart, if I pursue this calling willingly, enthusiastically, God will reward me. He wants me to do what I do for the cause of Christ because I love Him, because I trust Him and believe His word, and I do it so that He alone is glorified, that people will come to a right conclusion about my great God. Well, let me ask you, what's motivating your gospel witness? Have you been faithful to share the gospel with people who need it? How long has it been since you asked someone if you could share with them the transforming grace of God that has affected your life and that you know could transform their life as well? When's the last time you shared the gospel? Have you been a good steward of what God has entrusted to you? The gospel has been a transforming agent in my life and in your life, and it can do the same in others, but not if they don't hear it. And the way that they hear it is through a faithful preacher or someone who will be willing to say it, will be willing to tell them. Well, the Apostle Paul is going to go on to basically say, you know what, I'm willing to do what I have to do to relate to who I need to relate. in order that I might have the privilege of sharing the gospel with them. And then it's in this context of God's call upon his life that he gives those familiar verses in verse 24 and following. Know ye not that they which run in a race run all, but one receiveth the prize? So run that ye may obtain. And every man that striveth for the mastery is temperate in all things. In other words, uh, everyone who is playing in competition has to play by the rules. In other words, there is a lawfully way to do the game. And if you want to win the game, you have to play the game within the rules. Well, the same thing is absolutely true for us as Christians. God has the rules of how a person gets to heaven, and it is only through Christ. And the way that people are able to be confronted with the gospel is that people would preach the word, that they would share this gospel with people, and we would use our mouth as an instrument for God, and a help to people who need so desperately to hear the gospel. But nobody can do it for you. You and I have to decide whether or not we're going to be a gospel witness. If we're going to embrace this stewardship that's been entrusted to us, and whether or not we're going to run this race faithfully. I'm reminded of Hebrews chapter 12, the great cloud of witnesses, that as we're running this race, they are screaming, don't quit. You run lawfully. You run continually. You make sure you are faithful in the pursuit of God's call upon your life, so that when you get here, the only thing's that's going to matter is that you were faithful to the one who made all of this incredible place we call heaven possible. His name is Jesus. It's worth sharing. I trust that you will faithfully run your race today and every day as we wait for our amazing Savior to return for us. God bless you. I hope you have a great day. I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow.